Almost everyone has missed taking a flyover on Google Maps. 1 centimeter accuracy would have taken the flyover.
You just have to have your phone, and you can start mapping the world, and you can start accruing tokens and start monetizing. So that's the beauty of it.
What is it about DePIN that makes it easily understandable?
It's because people can actually see that being used.
When you're making an investment decision, how do you think about it? Because a lot of the early projects may not even have any signed customer to speak of.
It's a classic chicken and egg problem.
Hi everyone and welcome to a new episode of the OnlyDevs pod. Today we have Amit from Borderless Capital. He's a VC. He'll share his journey on being a VC for the last 15 years. Where is he investing? What are his insights towards DePIN and everything all around? With that, Sheikh, over to you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here, Amit. Welcome. What is so interesting about DePIN? I saw Borderless recently raised like $100 million fund to invest specifically into DePIN projects. So what is DePIN and why is it such a big focus for you guys at Borderless?
Sure. So very quick background. I've been in the investment space almost like decade and a half now. Been with Borderless coming to around 6 years now. I was the first hire, first partner. Prior to that, I was with another VC fund, and prior to that, I was in the US working with a pension fund out of Chicago, and then been in Web3 since 2016. Was earlier investing with a group of friends, which then morphed into a fund called Woodstock. I'm also an LP there, and in basically 2018 when Borderless started, joined Borderless. So that's a quick background on my journey. At Borderless, I'm one of the lead partners for our earlier algo funds, which are focused on Algorand and cross-chain ecosystem, and this new interoperability fund. And I also do portfolio management across all of our funds and so on. And because I've been there for so long time, I also get involved in vetting all the documents, term sheets, and all, making sure the agreements actually say what they're supposed to say. Right. So that's a quick, but now kind of, jumping into your question. So I think we have been very active in this DePIN space uh, right from our second fund. So maybe it was early 2020. We used to call it EdgeFi, and then actually eventually the whole industry converged, and then the name got changed into DePIN. So this will be our third vintage, DePIN Fund 3. And I think when we had started, we actually started our first fund, which was a Helium HNT staking and mining fund. We also had a sister company. The founder of Borderless, he also had a sister company, which at one point control almost 70% of supply of helium hotspots. So it was like the largest B2B supplier of helium hotspots. So that gave us a very good grounding understanding of kind of how this space actually works. What is very unique about this is it is one of the few areas in Web3 which is a combination of hardware plus Web3. So like DeFi is just DeFi, somebody going and playing around in finance and this, and so especially now, I think why it is really coming into mainstream is because with this ETFs launching, a lot of Web2, Web 2.5, crowd is coming into Web3, and they really understand DePIN. So they really understand, for example, Helium, what Helium is doing with Helium Mobile, what Wi-Fi Dabba is doing for internet access. So they can actually see how physical usage of hardware is kind of incentivized through Web3, and that is the use case for Web3. So I think that is why like it's the most kind of one of the hottest areas right now, and we are glad that we were in this early. And so after the first fund, we launched second fund. We have around 30 plus companies from that fund, and now we are in our fund 3, which is the DePIN Fund 3.
You mentioned HFI, right? That I found that phrasing very interesting. Could you talk a little bit more about, what do you mean when you say HFI, or what the thought process then was?
Yeah, I think the idea was these devices are in the edge, so it was as simple as that. Edge Fi, so like Helium hotspots, they are kind of at the edge, and Fi is for the finance bit. So that was at a high level the idea. And what is very interesting to see how those things have morphed, right? So now, just to, for example, giving an example, everybody knows Helium, Wi-Fi Dabba. One of the other investments we led recently is Wingbits, where basically people who have flight tracking as a hobby. So flight radar, data 24, all of these, they actually flight aware. They actually sell and monetize flight data, which enthusiasts capture. So there are a lot of enthusiasts which actually capture through kind of rudimentary hardware flights going above, and that data is actually worth a gold mine, but they are not able to monetize. All the monetization is kept by these. So what Wingbits is doing is you can install kind of their antennas, and they can capture kind of data of the flights, and you get their token, and you are incentivized for capturing. So again, the whole concept of why Web3 started was taking centralization away and making it decentralized, giving power back to the 99%. So that is just one example of kind of, and again, that's the edge. So that's the edge in edge kind of. Yeah.
One more thing that you mentioned that I found very fascinating. You mentioned that when a lot of the traditional folks, when they are looking at what is happening with Helium or Wi-Fi Dabba, they are able to get it instantly, right? Whereas, for example, something to do with DeFi or something very uh, completely academic, like building a new ZK based stuff. Uh, what is it about DePIN that makes it easily understandable? Is it because they are closer to a real problem people
So
face?
it's stuff like this. Like I think is because people can actually see that being used, and for the right use cases, it's actually very tangible for people. Like somebody, for example, Pendle, working with interest rate swaps, it's hard for somebody who is not plugged into that to say, okay, that is happening, but what do I, or Uniswap, okay, or Curve or Aave, okay, that is, those are there. People in Web3, they of course kind of easily get it, but it's difficult for Web 2.0 folks to really fathom, okay, how am I benefiting from this? But when you talk about stuff like Wi-Fi Dabba, like Wingbits, GeoNet, which is into location tracking, which improves location precision, which improves the precision of GPS up to a centimeter, from a meter to a centimeter. So that is something which is very tangible for people, and that is something which they can relate to. Okay, now I understand why kind of.
And also, I think it's the relatability of the problem, right? For example, almost everyone has missed taking a flyover on Google Maps. So when the problem is such every day, do you say that 1 centimeter accuracy would have taken the
In
flyover?
addition to that, like, and happy to dive into like how we have defined in the sector and everything.
Yeah.
But what is very interesting is it is easy also for people. So there are two kinds of DePIN: bespoke and commoditized. Commoditized DePIN, you just need your phone to start participating and start getting tokens. So for example, in Natix, you just have to have your phone, and you can start mapping the world, and you can start kind of accruing tokens and start monetizing. So that's the beauty of it. It's not like you are just somebody who is a solution, kind of, who is seeking a solution. You are actually the one who is creating the solution, because it is decentralized, and you are actually the one who is earning. If you have a Helium hotspot, if you have a miner, you are actually the one who is earning. So that's the other reason why a lot of Web 2.5 people can relate to it.
You mentioned a bunch of obvious use cases. For example, Helium is one, the flight tracking is one. What are the other very obvious deep-in use cases that can be utilized today and not in the future?
I think these two, GeoNet is another one would like to call out. So as I was saying, that there are a lot of use cases in drones, in precision agriculture, where they need to have centimeter level accuracy, and GPS is just not there today. GPS is a meter level accuracy. So they have this thing called RTA network, where you have antennas. The network providers have antennas, and as a result of having that antenna, like this actually is, this is a perfect place to have a GeoNet antenna. Like for a building, it becomes a little difficult, But if you have that, then you actually earn geo tokens. You are contributing to improving the accuracy of GPS, kind of. So that is another one. We 00, which I was talking about a little bit when we were coming here. So they are the team. In 00, they come originally from kind of jump and trading background. So there, in high frequency trading, even a millisecond of latency can means a huge difference in the trading output, like sometimes millions of dollars. So the idea is how to bring that capacity into Web3. So they are actually using unused capacity, going to put more optical fibers to bring that latency into Web3. So that's kind of 00. Then internet. So there are a few companies which are trying to bring again decentralize and get Wi-Fi to areas which today don't have Wi-Fi. That is another use case. Slightly different use case is one of our podcasts called Tano. So today you can't monetize, which is a classic problem. Facebook, um, Twitter, and all, they actually monetize your data. You are the product there. So this actually allows you to monetize your data, kind of. So yeah.
Very cool. And when you're investing, like what are you looking at then? Is it immediate use cases, P&L? What stage do you invest
We
in?
have multiple thematic funds because we're talking about DePIN, so I'll focus a little bit more on the DePIN side. We come in early, usually pre-seed, seed. So we think of ourselves as founders first. How do we kind of partner with the right founders and actually help them achieve their dreams and build this, right? So we are here in the business of enabling founders achieve their dream, kind of. And so one of the things, something which I think all the VCs would look at is how solid is the team, the business idea, is it scalable, is the market big enough, but I think along with that, maybe what is more specific to DePIN, usually most of the DePINs have a marketplace. So usually there is a supply side. So supply side will be where the hardware is coming from or where the data for that is coming from, and demand side will be who is paying for the data. So for example, for GeoNet, supply side will be how many people can install the antennas, where is the RTK network, where is the data for that location coming from. But the demand side is, okay, are there people who are willing to pay for that precision data, right? What is very interesting in this flywheel is the demand side actually is the usually the more difficult one to crack, because that is where you actually monetize. So one of the things which we look at is how strong is the demand side, is this data something which could be monetized, and so on. So those are some of the, so that is something which is very, I think, specific to DePIN. Is one of the key things is the demand side. And other than that, also one thing which is very different in DePIN as compared to, say, and this is my personal observation as compared to DeFi and all, is usually DeFi and other sectors in Web3, they are usually competitive. Like, an Aave would like to take away a customer, from Curve, for example. But DePIN, it's very complementary. So if you see, there is this concept called multi-miners. So what we are doing, in fact, even now with the event tomorrow, is deploying multi-miners where through one hardware miner you can mine multiple tokens. So that's so usually what I have seen is DePIN projects are actually very complementary. They use the distribution of their kind of fellow projects to help achieve scale, and instead of being kind of competitive.
Coming back to the investment decisions, how you think about this, right? You mentioned demand is like super critical, or at least a semblance of demand. So at an early stage, how do you actually weigh this? For a lot of these networked projects, coverage is the most important thing, right? So, and uh, often oftentimes either the coverage has hit some kind of critical mass such that it is useful, so that anyone actual demand even wants to approach it, right? So when you're making an investment decision, how do you think about it? Because a lot of the early projects may not even have any signed customer to speak of, right?
No, no, exactly. It's a classic chicken and egg problem, right? Like, you need to have a customer to then go and entice more people to give supply, and but to get a customer you need supply. So it's that classic chicken and egg which usually happens. To some extent, the short answer is it's a call you have to take. It's a bet you have to take that, okay, this person is going to crack, this founder is going to crack the demand side. But there are some signals, for example, for GeoNet, right? Even if maybe they don't have paying customers, do they have POCs, proof of concepts? Do they have MOUs? Is that data something which is usable, which people could pay for it? Potential customers. So that's the short answer. But the candid thing is eventually it comes down to it's a bet on the founder being able to crack the demand side. And one more thing actually I missed earlier is one of the very interesting thing about DePINs, which makes it very different from Web2 investing, is DePIN has this whole supply chain thing. Because so again, there are two types of DePIN. One is commoditized DePIN. So commoditized DePIN will be where you don't need any specific hardware. So you can just use your smartphone. Most of the times it is smartphone, it could be smartwatch, it could be Kudis ring, so like ring, so on. That they are also a portfolio company. But it can also be a bespoke DePIN. So if it's a bespoke DePIN, it's like Wi-Fi Dabba. It's like a Hive mapper where you need a particular dash cam to start mapping. So that's the
In a way, the hardware itself is the
hardware, yeah. And then the thing is, okay, whenever there is a bespoke hardware involved, if it's not a Google manufactured phone, if it's a Hive mapper branded hardware or a GeoNet branded antenna, then there is this whole supply chain element on making sure. Then kind of a lot of the projects, for example, have supply chains in China where the hardware gets manufactured in China, gets kind of shipped here, and the whole operation supply chain comes into the place. So that is the other one of the other things we look when we are looking at DePIN projects. If it is a bespoke DePIN project, have they really cracked the supply chain formula? The bill of materials, what's going to be the margin, is it scalable? Suddenly one of our kind of portfolio companies, for example, they weren't able to scale as fast. They got a demand for like 1,000 devices and they could only manufacture like for 50 at a time. So that's the other challenge you have to keep in mind.
And also, I think in the last cycle that if you there is like increasingly shift towards deepen tending to be things which have a physical component, that is the hardware, versus things that are purely virtual in nature for things like where you have a CDN or a storage, right, or even compute for that matter. So where do you see this trend evolving? Do you think that it will get more pronounced where the, it is going to become very, very important for there to be a physical component, both in terms of structural advantages and building up modes, versus something you can easily replicate in terms of a software?
I get the question. See, any physical hardware, yes, there is, you can call it a moat. Like you need that hardware. Once you have enough people using that hardware, then it's difficult for someone else to come and break it. But it comes with huge network challenges. It's very difficult to I will tell you, like, even if you ship the hardware for free, if it is hard for people to install, if it's a pain, it is very difficult for people to, it's like your app, you don't want another app in your phone. So that's the challenge that happens. The idea is that if a problem can be solved without adding an extra hardware complexity, it is actually better to keep it like commodity. You just do it from phone or your existing hardware. At the end of the day, that is not the main thing. The main thing is what problem are you solving, right? What did, like, okay, you are capturing data for flights. You are helping expand Wi-Fi access or telecom access. So that, I think, then there is a means to achieving that, either through commoditized DePIN or to bespoke. But I think what's more critical is what are you actually solving, basically.
I think that's absolutely well put. Speaking of problem statements, right? What are some problem statements that you are looking forward?
A lot of things have been done, like internet, Wi-Fi, kind of flights, uh, social media through Taneo, location accuracy. These have been done. Uh, kind of variables, physical variables, right? That is another exciting one. So that was one of our first investments. There was the Kudis ring. So I think there'll be a few more, there'll be a playbook there on variables and how data for that is monetized, maybe in health and other use cases. There was another very interesting, I'm forgetting the name now, company which was into vaping, and they had created some vaping related yeah, something vape to yeah. So vape, yeah, there was so we didn't end up investing there, but that's the beauty of it. The space is so wide, like they almost every single aspect of your life that you can think of. It anything which the best way to think of it is anything which is today centralized, like Google Maps is centralized, you decentralized it using DePIN. So that's the idea, like anything, and within other thing there, just to on that part is there's a company called Rover. We are in advanced talks with them. They do lidar tracking, where the accuracy for location data is much higher. The GPS data is much higher, and you can do many more things with that. So stuff like that, I think, and I'm sure there'll be several more like exciting things which come up in the medical space also, even in the DeAI space. One of the other interesting aspects is like this whole decentralized AI, DAI. A lot of funds, including us, we include that as a part of DePIN. Because one core concept, one of the key things there is, and we can go, that's a whole separate topic. But within DAI, one of the things which happens is unused GPU power, unused this. So bunch of companies who are doing that. So that also falls. So that is another area which is quite exciting. Yeah.
It naturally feels like, there's, if you were to strictly go by, what we see in the world, there is like insatiable amount of demand for GPUs. Nvidia is making a new chip. There's always a backlog, right? So, and then almost every company is jumping onto the AI bandwagons. How does so going by this, you would think that there's actual, as long as there is an empty GPU available, there is demand for it. So how does this actually translate into practice? Have you come across places where this is naturally better, or people are still not used?
So at a broad level, maybe the best way to answer it is taking a step back. At a broad level in the AI space, kind of the way we divide it is, one is more on the infrastructure side, the GPU infrastructure side. From there, for example, we are early investors in Render, Otoy, which was listed quite early, and a few more in that space. Then the other one is training. There is a huge amount of data needed to train. Although you can have AI models and everything, but you need huge amount of data to train those models. So that is the second kind of element. And then the third element is AI infrastructure. So at a broad level, kind of, there are different ways you can break the pie down, but this is one, maybe the simplest way to look at it. So on the infrastructure side, there are companies which are one trying to get increased capacity by getting spare capacity from data centers by huge GPU deployers, right? That is one. Or there are other companies which are getting GPU from end users. So if in your laptop you have a system, you have a GPU, and that is not being used, you use that. So both of them are fine. We are not very bullish about this side. We have done a few investments here. One of the biggest mistakes we have seen some companies do there is they would actually raise equity capital and use that capital to go and buy supply, which is definitely not scalable. And we are more bullish on the other two subsectors. The second subsector is the training one. So we have done fraction AI, we have done a few more there, where you and several subsectors there. So even within training, because these AI models use so much of data, so Open Ledger, which is another company from India, so what they do is, so there are companies which match data, and or they have people in kind of India, Thailand, Vietnam, where you get incentivized in tokens to identify what the diagram is and so on. So that is one model, but the other is also synthetic data. So what Open Ledger is doing is creating synthetic data, because they feel that there is not enough raw data out there, so you have to create it synthetically. So there are multiple, and then there is this concept of governance also, like who gives their data and so on. So there are, and that is something, the second part, which I think we are a little more bullish about. And then the third is infra. So infra, for example, one of the companies we have invested in is called Layer Lens, which basically benchmarks various AI models. So for your usage, how did Claude do versus GPT-4? How did this in a unbiased way? Then there is another company which is building micro. So you have LLMs, large language models. The output sometimes they give for very specific use cases. So for example, if you have Zostal, right, and if you need like a AI model for this one, the output might not be as accurate. Or if for a specific healthcare use case, if you need a specific output, it might not, the LLM, because it has been trained in such a huge broad data set, it might not be very specific. So you have this concept of micro, kind of language models, where they are trained to some specific use cases, and there the output is much more accurate and relatable. So that is another company. We have invested in a company called Neural Fabric, which is building that micro models for specific use cases.
So, as a young, 20-year-old developer there is a new hackathon that is going to start on April 14th called Solana Breakout. So their DePIN is a track. So historically, if especially for builders from India, DePIN has been such a hot topic because there are so many other success stories that they can look up to, right? So for such developers who are aspiring to build something, what is something that you would tell them, or what should they focus on?
I would say just go and build, don't overthink, just go and build. Find the harder the problem is to solve, the more the reward for solving it, right? There are enough, kind of resources out there. Usually sometimes, as they say, the hardest is the first step. Once you take the first step, everything falls into play. Yeah, one more other point, maybe piece of advice is, not every project, and we are going to have a debate about this tomorrow as well. I think Aditya has planned it. The idea is you don't really need a token. Like, it's not necessary that every DePIN project needs a token. So don't, the token is something which can come as a, kind of later as well. But really focus on the problem you are solving, right? And what are you trying to achieve? And be complementary with others. Sometimes in hackathons, the teams you build with, they end up becoming some of the biggest companies later, and you have access to them early on. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that is great advice. Be focused on the problem statement.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else? Otherwise, we
I
could.
think that covers it all. Thank you so much, Amit, for your time.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.